The Machinery of Propaganda and the Burden of Failure in Trinidad and Tobago, an editorial by Professor Wall Street. No Dr. Amery Browne, former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, has achieved the gold medal for being the worst Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago's history. In healthy democracies, senators serve as institutional watchdogs, not party publicists. Yet PNM Senator Amery Browne, former foreign minister, perpetual party spokesman, and Senate fixture, has operated with such unwavering loyalty to partisan messaging that his role as legislator has been eclipsed by his function as propagandist. This is not partisan hyperbole. It is observable fact, documented through years of public statements, parliamentary theater, and media performance. Simultaneously, the widespread public condemnation of Dr. Keith Rowley's administration, 2015-2025, did not materialize from political conspiracy or opposition hysteria. It was forged in the crucible of lived experience, economic stagnation, institutional collapse, historic crime levels, and unambiguous electoral repudiation. While labeling any leader worst prime minister remains subjective, it becomes significant when that judgment echoes across civil society organizations, labor movements, independent media, talk radio, and most damningly, the ballot box itself. What follows is an evidence-based examination of Senator Browne's role in the PNM's propaganda machine and a factual accounting of why Dr. Rowley's legacy is one of comprehensive failure and is the worst prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago's history. Part 1. The Anatomy of a Propagandist. Here are 10 reasons why Senator Amery Browne earned the label. Propaganda is not merely lying. It is the art of selective truth, strategic framing, and tactical deflection deployed in service of power rather than accountability. By this standard, Senator Browne is a master practitioner. The evidence is overwhelming. 1. Party defense masquerading as parliamentary oversight. The Senate exists to scrutinize executive power. Browne instead weaponizes it to defend cabinet decisions, legitimize questionable policies, and provide institutional cover for governmental failures. His interventions read less like independent legislative analysis and more like prepared talking points from Barley's House. 2. Data cherry-picking as statecraft. When positive macroeconomic indicators emerge, however fleeting or context-dependent, Browne amplifies them relentlessly. Meanwhile, countervailing realities, record crime, professional outmigration, SME collapse, healthcare deterioration, are systematically ignored or minimized. This is not analysis. It is selective curation designed to manufacture consent. 3. The global headwinds deflection strategy. Every domestic policy failure is reframed as an unavoidable consequence of COVID-19, Ukraine, oil price volatility, or international trends. Yet regional peers facing identical external pressures, Barbados, Guyana, even Jamaica, manage better outcomes through superior governance. Browne's rhetoric transforms ministerial incompetence into geopolitical inevitability. 4. The normalization of violence. As homicide rates shattered records year after year, Browne deployed euphemistic language. Crime is complex, inherited, multifaceted. This linguistic sanitization served a clear political purpose: to inoculate the administration from accountability while the population lived in fear. Rhetoric replaced results. If there were a murder Olympics in Trinidad and Tobago, Rowley would have won gold, silver, and bronze for recording the first, second, and third highest annual murder rates under his watch. 5. Diplomatic gravitas as domestic cover. As foreign minister, Browne cultivated a polished international persona while domestic governance crumbled. The disconnect was deliberate. Project competence abroad while avoiding responsibility at home. It's easier to discuss multilateralism at international forums than explain why citizens can't access functioning healthcare. 6. Ad hominem attacks over substantive engagement. When civil society groups, trade unions, or independent journalists challenge government policy, Browne's response is predictable. Question their motives, imply political bias, dismiss their legitimacy. This rhetorical tactic, attacking messengers rather than addressing messages, is propaganda 101. 7. Institutional decay ignored. Procurement paralysis, police ineffectiveness, judicial backlogs collapsing infrastructure. These are not abstract policy debates. They are governance failures with devastating real-world consequences. Yet Browne's public commentary maintains conspicuous silence on systemic institutional rot, focusing instead on ribbon-cutting ceremonies and aspirational announcements. 8. Historical revisionism in real time. The PNM's 2015-2025 decade is consistently described as a period of stability and responsible stewardship. This requires ignoring economic contraction, population flight, crime explosion, electoral defeats, and measurable declines in virtually every quality of life indicator. Orwell would recognize this technique. 9. Message discipline that betrays coordination. Browne's statements align with party talking points with mechanical precision. Whether addressing crime, the economy, or opposition criticism, his language mirrors PNM press releases almost verbatim. This level of consistency suggests centralized message control, the infrastructure of propaganda. 10. The absence of accountability. In a decade of governance, not once has Senator Browne offered meaningful acknowledgement of PNM policy failure, expressed genuine regret to suffering citizens, or demonstrated intellectual humility. There is only justification, rationalization, and deflection. This is not leadership, it is institutional narcissism. Part 2. Why History? Will Judge Dr. Keith Rowley harshly 10 incontrovertible failures. The descriptor worst prime minister is opinion. But opinions grounded in objective failure, measurable decline, and democratic rejection carry weight. The evidence against Rowley's legacy is damning. 1. Historic crime crisis. Trinidad and Tobago experienced unprecedented homicide rates under Rowley's watch. This is not disputed. Citizens became prisoners in their homes, while the Prime Minister offered lectures rather than solutions. Public safety, the most fundamental obligation of government, collapsed catastrophically. 2. Economic regression. Despite periodic energy windfalls, the economy remained dangerously dependent on hydrocarbons, while diversification initiatives produced little beyond press releases. Real household purchasing power declined. Business confidence evaporated. Youth unemployment festered. The promised economic transformation never materialized. 3. The brain drain acceleration. Professionals, doctors, engineers, educators, entrepreneurs fled the country in record numbers. This exodus represented not merely economic migration, but a damning vote of no confidence in national leadership. They voted with their feet, and that verdict is permanent. 4. Institutional paralysis. Major reforms were announced repeatedly. Police modernization, procurement efficiency, education transformation, healthcare improvements. Virtually none were delivered. The gap between rhetoric and reality became a chasm. Citizens learned to ignore government promises as performative theater. 5. Electoral repudiation. The PNM suffered consecutive electoral defeats, including the humiliation of losing the popular vote, the clearest democratic verdict possible. Voters did not merely prefer alternatives, they actively rejected PNM governance. This is not opposition spin, it is arithmetic. 6. Leadership by condescension. Rowley's governance style evolved into open contempt for critics, journalists, and ordinary citizens. Press conferences became scolding sessions. Disagreement was treated as disloyalty. Where leadership requires persuasion, Rowley offered combativeness. Where unity was needed, he delivered division. 7. COVID-19 governance failures. Opaque decision-making, inconsistent restrictions, communication failures, and questionable procurement all eroded public trust during a moment when national cohesion was essential. The pandemic exposed leadership deficits that routine governance had obscured. 8. The deterioration of public discourse. National conversations under Rowley's tenure descended from policy debate to personal attacks, from substantive disagreement to tribal warfare. Rather than elevating public discourse, the Prime Minister coarsened it, modeling divisiveness from the highest office. 9. Squandered opportunity. Energy revenue windfalls were consumed by current expenditure rather than invested in structural transformation. Future generations will inherit depleted resources without the infrastructure, institutions, or economic foundations that windfall years should have provided. This is intergenerational theft masquerading as fiscal management. 10. A legacy of fragmentation. Rowley's tenure deepened every fault line in Trinidad and Tobago society: political, racial, economic, generational. Where statesmanship demands bridge building, Rowley offered entrenchment. He leaves the country more divided, more cynical, and more despairing than he found it. In conclusion, when propaganda meets reality. Senator Amery Browne did not invent political propaganda in Trinidad and Tobago, but he refined its delivery to an art form. Articulate, disciplined, and ruthlessly committed to party preservation over public accountability. His Senate tenure represents the institutionalization of spin as statecraft. Dr. Keith Rowley, meanwhile, departs office not merely criticized, but comprehensively repudiated by voters, by outcomes, and by history's early accounting. His defenders will point to external challenges. His critics will note that leadership is defined precisely by how one navigates adversity. On that standard, Rowley failed spectacularly. This editorial does not claim universal consensus. Democracies rarely produce it, but it reflects a dominant public judgment shaped not by opposition propaganda, but by measurable failure, lived suffering, and democratic rejection. The final historical verdict remains unwritten, but the citizens have already rendered theirs, and they did so decisively, repeatedly, and without ambiguity. The record speaks. The propaganda cannot silence it, and the evidence is clear. Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley is the worst Prime Minister in the history of Trinidad and Tobago.